Imagine a beautiful, sunny morning in New York's Central Park. People are jogging, reading, and enjoying the day. But then, a strange gust of wind blows through the trees. A woman sitting on a bench suddenly freezes. She looks at her friend with a blank expression and says she forgot who she is. Her speech becomes confused, repeating words. Then, without warning, she calmly reaches into her hair, pulls out a long, sharp hairpin, and plunges it into her own neck. This is just the beginning. All across the park, the scene repeats. People stop in their tracks, their faces going blank, before they find the nearest possible way to end their own lives. This isn't a single crazed person. It's an epidemic of suicide, spreading like a plague on the wind. Hundreds of miles away in Philadelphia, a high school science teacher named Elliot Moore is about to find himself in the middle of a fight for survival against an enemy he can't see, can't understand, and can't possibly reason with. Because the greatest threat to humanity isn't from the stars, but from the ground beneath their feet. Our story begins with Elliot Moore in his Philadelphia apartment. His relationship with his wife, Alma, is falling apart. They're arguing about their future, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Alma has a secret. She's been meeting with a man from work named Joey, and the guilt is eating away at her. Elliot, a thoughtful but somewhat passive man, seems more confused by their problems than angry. Their personal crisis is interrupted by a much larger one. At the high school where Elliot teaches, an emergency meeting is called. The principal informs the staff that there are reports of a major terrorist attack on the East Coast. The leading theory is a chemical toxin released in major cities, starting with New York. The news spreads panic. School is dismissed, and chaos begins to grip the city. Elliot's best friend, a math teacher named Julian, insists they have to get out of Philadelphia immediately. He plans to take his young daughter Jess and escape to the countryside. He convinces Elliot and Alma to come with them, hoping the crisis might force them to work through their problems. They pack quickly and head for the train station, joining a flood of people desperately trying to flee. Elliot, Alma, Julian, and Jess manage to get tickets and board a train heading west. The mood inside the train car is tense and somber. Passengers whisper about what they've heard. News from Philadelphia turns grim. Apparently, the same phenomenon from Central Park has just hit a local park there. People began walking backwards, talking nonsensically, and then harming themselves. Alma gets a call from her friend, who describes the symptoms in horrifying detail. The toxin first affects speech, then motor functions, and finally, it triggers a powerful, unstoppable urge for self-destruction. The sheer speed of it is bewildering. The escape, however, proves to be temporary. Suddenly, the train screeches to a halt in the middle of the New Jersey countryside. The conductors emerge, looking panicked. They announce that they have lost all contact with the outside world. The train service has been discontinued, and this is the last stop for everyone. The passengers are forced to exit onto a platform in a tiny, isolated town called Filbert. They are completely stranded. Hundreds of people from the train spill into the town, overwhelming its small diner and creating a refugee camp atmosphere. The initial belief in a coordinated terrorist attack begins to crumble. The patterns don't make sense. Inside the crowded diner, a breakthrough comes from an unlikely source. The diner's owner is listening to a radio, and he shares what he's heard. News reports are suggesting a mind-boggling new theory. It isn't terrorists. It might be the plants. The owner explains that something similar happened at a biolab in Alaska. Scientists were found dead, and the current theory is that the plants in the lab somehow released a chemical. Suddenly, the strange behavior of the wind makes terrifying sense. The trees, the grass, the very foliage surrounding them might be the enemy. People react with disbelief and hysteria. How can you fight the air itself? Elliot, with his scientific mind, starts to connect the dots. He remembers a lecture he gave about nature's defense mechanisms, how certain plants can release chemicals to wipe out specific threats. He recalls an event where plants in Egypt wiped out a population of red ants that were overrunning the area. The toxin was custom-made, affecting only the ants. He looks around at the panicked crowd and has a chilling realization. Maybe humanity is being treated like a virus. The plants are fighting back, releasing an airborne neurotoxin to eradicate the most damaging species on the planet, us. He concludes that the toxin is triggered by large groups of people. The plants perceive a crowd as a singular, large threat. To survive, they need to get away from other people. The smaller the group, the better their chances. This new theory creates a divide. While some people decide to wait for help, Elliot knows they have to keep moving. But this decision leads to a heartbreaking separation. Julian becomes distraught. He received a message that his wife, who was in Princeton, was heading back to their town to find them. Overcome with guilt and fear for her safety, Julian decides he must go back to find her. Elliot pleads with him, explaining the mathematical probability of survival is low, but Julian's mind is made up. He entrusts his daughter, Jess, to Elliot and Alma, making them promise to keep her safe. He hands Jess a picture of their family and tells her to hold it until he gets back. With a final, sorrowful look, Julian leaves the group and hitches a ride with another family heading toward Princeton. Elliot, Alma, and Jess are now a small, broken family unit. They are taken in by a kind nursery owner and his wife, who overheard Elliot's theory in the diner. The nursery owner is an expert in botany and confirms that plants can indeed communicate and release complex chemicals. He explains that all types of plants seem capable of this defense mechanism. A certain number of plants being triggered sets off a chain reaction, making nearby plants more sensitive. He speculates that it could eventually take just a single drop of saliva from a caterpillar to set off an entire field of trees. This confirms their worst fears. There is no safe place, only safer behavior. Their journey continues, but they soon witness the tragic fate of Julian. They watch from a distance as the car he was in drives into a quiet suburban neighborhood in Princeton. The wind picks up, rustling the leaves on the trees. From the trees, they see a horrific sight: the bodies of landscape workers hanging from garden hoses tied around their necks. Inside the car, Julian desperately tries to keep the other passengers calm by distracting them with a math riddle. But it's too late. A small tear in the car's convertible roof allows the wind to seep in. The air inside becomes toxic. The driver loses control, and the car accelerates directly into a tree. The passengers are thrown through the windshield as a dazed and bloody Julian stumbles out of the wreckage. He calmly sits down in the middle of the empty street, picks up a broken piece of glass, and cuts his wrists. Devastated, Elliot and Alma know they have no choice but to keep moving, now with Jess in their care. They continue on, trying to stay away from populated areas. They eventually come to a crossroads and meet another group of survivors led by a lone military man, Private Oster. He tells them his base was hit, and he saw no one else alive for miles. More cars arrive, and soon there is a large group of people gathered at the intersection, all panicked and confused. Elliot urgently explains his theory that the plants are targeting large groups. He insists that their only chance is to split up and travel in small numbers, staying off the main roads. His warning is taken seriously. The group splinters into smaller units, heading out across the vast, open fields of the countryside. Elliot, Alma, as they walk through the tall grass, a palpable sense of dread hangs in the air. The wind itself now sounds like a threat, a whispering predator. Their theory is soon proven correct in the most horrifying way possible. From across the field, they hear a series of gunshots. They realize it's the larger group that stayed together. The plants targeted them. There was no difference between their group and the military man's group, except one thing: theirs was larger. This confirms Elliot's hypothesis. A certain critical number of people together acts as a trigger. The small group continues their trek, eventually stumbling upon a newly built but completely deserted housing development. They find an unlocked model home, offering a moment of temporary shelter from the wind. Inside, everything is clean, sterile, and eerily quiet. In a moment of dark, ironic humor, Elliot finds himself talking to a large potted plant in the corner, trying to communicate with it, only to realize it's plastic. Outside the model home, Jared and Josh make a horrifying discovery. They find the bodies of 4 construction workers half buried in a pile of dirt, their mouths filled with soil. The sight confirms that even here, in this remote place, no one is safe. The group of 5 flees the model home and continues on foot, eventually finding an isolated farmhouse. The quiet is unsettling. They break in, desperate for food and shelter. While Alma looks after Jess, Elliot explores the property and finds a barn. Inside, a terrible sound rattles from a running saw.
While the boys try to peep inside and house and knock down the door, there is clinking sound, and out comes a rifle, which aims at one of the boy and shoots him in the chest. He is gone. The same gun aims at the other boy, but Elliot notices it and tries to save him, but he is too late, and the other boy is also hit. The remaining 3 run for their lives.
Their act of defiance only sealed their fate. Now completely alone, Elliot, Alma, and Jess walk for miles, passing through silent towns littered with bodies. The world has fallen quiet. They finally arrive in a place called Arundel County, a rural area with very few people. They spot an old, isolated house with no power lines and no driveway. It seems like the perfect hiding place. As they approach, an elderly woman, Mrs. Jones, appears on the porch. She is eccentric and wary, but she seems harmless. She offers them food and a place to stay for the night, explaining that she has no contact with the outside world and prefers it that way. She grows her own food and lives a simple, solitary life. At first, the house feels like a sanctuary, a haven from the invisible terror outside. But Mrs. Jones's behavior is deeply unsettling. She speaks in strange riddles and seems intensely paranoid, believing they are there to harm her. She has a strict, almost fanatical religious belief, and her house is filled with unsettling icons and crucifixes. The atmosphere grows more and more tense. The threat has shifted from the invisible toxin to this very strange and unpredictable old woman. They survive the wind, but can they survive their host? The next morning, the horror returns. Elliot wakes up and looks for Mrs. Jones. He finds her outside in the garden, talking to her plants. When he calls out to her, she turns, her face completely passive. The wind is blowing. The toxin has found her. She begins walking backwards, her movements stiff and unnatural. She then turns and runs full speed toward the house, smashing her head against the wall with incredible force. She does it again and again until she collapses. Panic erupts. Elliot rushes back inside, screaming for Alma and Jess to shut the windows and doors. He realizes they are trapped. The toxin is outside, waiting. He hears Alma and Jess's voices and discovers they are in a small stone spring house in the backyard, separated from him. Their only way to communicate is through an old speaking pipe that runs underground between the 2 buildings. Separated by a field of deadly grass, they are forced to confront their own impending doom. Through the pipe, Alma finally confesses her secret about Joey. She tells Elliot she went to meet him, but didn't go through with anything because she loves him. Elliot, facing what he believes are his final moments, tells her it doesn't matter anymore. He realizes that all the rules he thought he understood might be wrong. Maybe the plants target any human presence, no matter the size. Maybe there is no escape. He tells Alma that he refuses to die alone. He would rather face the end with her than hide in separate buildings. In a moment of pure love and defiance, he decides to walk outside. He tells Alma he is coming for her, and that if the toxin is going to get them, it will get them together. He steps out into the yard. The wind whips around him. The grass sways violently. He closes his eyes, waiting for the end. Across the field, Alma watches from the springhouse window, tears streaming down her face. Seeing Elliot's bravery, she makes her own choice. She opens the door and, holding Jess's hand tightly, steps out into the wind to meet him. They walk toward each other in the middle of the field, the wind howling around them, fully expecting their minds to go blank at any second. They reach each other, embrace, and wait. But nothing happens. The moment passes. The wind continues to blow, but the threat is gone. They survived. They have no idea why, They only know that for some reason, the event has ended. 3 months later, life is returning to a strange new normal. Elliot and Alma are back together, their relationship healed by the shared trauma. Jess is now their daughter. The event, as it came to be known, simply stopped as abruptly as it began. Scientists speculate it was a temporary phenomenon, a brief, violent reaction from the planet that lasted for a specific duration before receding. But the film leaves us with a chilling final thought. As a news report plays on television, we see scenes from around the world. In Paris, people are starting to freeze in the parks. The wind is picking up. The trees are swaying. The happening wasn't just an American event. It was a warning. And now, somewhere else, it's beginning all over again.